What's up, YouTube? It's Sam, back at it with one more video. So I kind of have a hard time passing up really good deals, and I bought potentially one of the best or the worst cars you could ever imagine. Say hello to my 2005 Mercedes S600. So these cars pretty much look the same as one of the lesser peasant spec S500s or S430s, but let me show you one of the key differences under the hood. Say hello to a very dirty but completely perfect running Mercedes M275 5.5 liter V12 twin turbo. The stock rated power is 493 horsepower and 590 foot-pounds of torque at 1800 RPM. Like you're talking like this is like truck bro stuff. The amount of torque that this engine actually makes. And the coolest thing about it is that it's a very heavy car. This car weighs about 4,800 pounds, but in truck world, that's very light. So this big body Benz can actually hang with most of the fastest stuff on the road and really gives a lot of sports car guys a real scare when it looks like they're getting passed by, you know, an S430 on the highway. Listen to how solid even the hood sounds when you close it. This car has a very interesting story because these cars are notoriously expensive to fix and keep on the road. The owner that I got this from bought this car. He was a second owner, I believe, and he bought it with low mileage, and he lived in Minnesota, don't you know? From Minnesota. He drove this car all over the place, and he put a lot of work into it. Like if you look at the maintenance records, it's like a Bible for this car, which is what you want to see when you're buying a car that was originally $140,000 in 2005. But eventually what happened is the suspension on these cars is different from any other car on the road. You've heard of how expensive and problematic air suspension is. Well, the Germans, they go one step further. This has hydraulic suspension. So forget about your air struts. These have oil in them, which is awesome. The way that it rides, the way that it adjusts. This boat of a car that has literally no body roll for, you know, especially you would think this thing would just be falling all over the place like an older Lexus or, you know, a normal Mercedes with the peasant spec coil spring suspension, but not in the 600. But for the cost to repair one broken corner of the ABC, it's called ABC Active Body Control, is what they called it. To replace one corner of ABC, it is so expensive that you can actually do all four corners and a pump on an airmatic suspension Mercedes, and that is not a cheap suspension system either. But when you compare it to this, it's peanuts. This is not a type of corporate business car. They would have a 500. The 600 is owned by the guy who owns the company. That's just how these cars are. And it has so many features and comfort items and quality that you can't find in any other car, but a newer version of this car, which if you check the price is of the modern day equivalent, about $180,000 to replace this car. So take a look at the back seat. Look at this door. The door is about the length of a Mini Cooper. And don't mind all the dirty microfibers, but you can see this is all real leather. Real leather, real wood, heated rear seats, of course. The rear seats are also power adjustable, which you're starting to see in more cars nowadays, but you know, you have to realize this car was in 2005. It has rear climate controls, of course, and what's different about those is it doesn't just funnel the air to the back, it has its own separate blower motor for the rear and for the front. So you could have the front being air conditioned and the rear being heated, and hey, you can do that. And of course, course, with a car like this, you know, they've had this feature since about the 80s, but the doors shut themselves. Why would you want to shut your door all the way on this car? Even though they're so heavy that they pretty much do shut themselves already. The trunk, of course. I like to have a shout out to Ice Mountain. They're the ones that keep me hydrated. I don't like Aquafina or Dasani. They taste like plastic. And then, of course, to shut the trunk. And back when this car was made, they didn't have to have the safety features to make the car beep at you when the trunk's about to shut. So if you ever want to decapitate someone loading the trunk, you just hit the button in the driver's side and it'll just come right down on top of them. It's a cool feature if you're a hitman. The wheels on this car are actually from a newer W221 S550. So far, I've owned this BIturbo beast for about 3-4 days, and I decided a good main voyage would be a trip down to the local city of Chicago for St. Patrick's Day. The car made it there without a hitch. It is the smoothest, most comfortable, amazing car you could possibly drive on the highway. However, the Mercedes did kind of get me at one point. When we parked in a parking garage on Sunday, Saturday and Sunday morning, it was totally reliable. However, we went to a skate park and parked this car in a parking garage. I may have boosted it a little bit up some of the very steep inclines, but when we got back to the vehicle, I was given the warning of doom. The check engine light and the car started misfiring. Now, one of the big issues with these cars is that the coil packs are not individual for the cylinders. If one cylinder coil pack goes out on one bank, you have to replace the entire bank of cylinders. I have no idea why Mercedes designed it that way, but that's just how it is. So, just so you know, the price for one of these coils, for the left or the right bank, the even or the odd bank, is about $1,500 per coil. So if one coil in your coil pack goes bad, you have to throw away all 5 working coils because it's one unit. How crazy is that? These cars were not ever designed to fall into the hands of people that did not have a bank account ending in 18 zeros. So anyhow, after this car started misfiring, I of course panicked and was already picturing myself driving this car home down Highway 90, the car stuttering and lurching and running like garbage. But luckily, the German car gods had blessed me. What we did, me and my 4 friends, I dropped the hood on the car and I literally started smacking the hood, as you will now see in this reenactment. Work! 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 You're a German! You have a good work ethic! It's your job to run! Run correctly! Don't be stereotypical, please! Shortly after we have banged around on the plastic engine cover and yelled at it in English and in German, we started up the vehicle, and while the check engine light remained, the car ran smooth as butter. So then, I went to a local neighborhood that probably is not a very nice neighborhood to buy a code reader to try to grab the codes to know a little bit of what was happening. So, I bought a code reader for about $65 at some super ghetto neighborhood AutoZone and pulled the codes on it. The codes that it gave me were P0300 through P0314 codes, which means that there was 14 misfire codes that were affecting this engine. And it was running smooth when I pulled the codes. So, stupid Sam, of course, tries to clear the codes with a $60 cheap code reader, and that caused the vehicle to run on like 4 cylinders. So it literally went from running terrible when I first started it, to running fine, to then me clearing the codes and it running way worse than it ran in the beginning. But luckily, I just waited it out, you know, banged on the engine a couple more times, and while the check engine light remained, once again, the vehicle ran smooth. It gave me full power. There was no more misfires. So then we drove the vehicle back from Chicago that night, trying to get the car to act up. We are boosting this thing on the highway, trying to get this thing to start misfiring again so I can know how predictable it is for this car to run like crap. And let me tell you, this car ran absolutely perfect with that check engine light on. There was no loss of power. We beat every single car that pulled up next to this thing and challenged it. I don't think there's any car that will keep up with this thing from 60 to like 130. Like, this thing is just a beast on the highway. That's what it was made to do. And I then drove the car to work this morning after letting it sit outside and have a cold start. Because normally when these V12 Mercedes misfire, they misfire the worst when they are in a cold start scenario. Started up this morning and I was greeted by the nice orange glow of the check engine light, but the car ran perfect. So I drove it to work today, and prior knowledge is I work at a car dealership that also sells Mercedes-Benz, a Mercedes-Benz dealership. And drove it to work, and I was gonna, you know, pop in after hours and have a technician pull the codes from it with his expensive Mercedes scan tool that you cannot buy at AutoZone on the south side. When we pulled the codes, or actually, before this even happened, I drove this car to lunch with the check engine light on, and when I got out of the McDonald's and got into my car and turned this car on, the check engine light went away. This car cleared its own faults. It realized that it actually did not have all these misfires, and the check engine light vanished. To my amazement, there is truly German car gods that will go over these things. We pulled the codes on this car, and I have the whole printout to show you what actually happened, but it's very, very weird. One of the technicians said that these cars can just sometimes lose their minds. You're dealing with 12-year-old computers, and every single thing has like 5 computers running it, which sounded great in 2005. But now that the car is 12 years old, oh boy, you gotta have a deep pocket to replace these computers. Let's take a look at the printout sheet from the diagnostic equipment. Read it and weep. So there is all of these codes. You have P0300 to pretty much P0312. Cylinder 1 misfire. Cylinder 7, 11, 9, 12, 10, and 2. As well as a bunch of other faults with this car that make a lot of the interior features make more sense, such as the massaging front seats that don't massage. Oh no, who cares? The massage seats in these cars suck anyway. So, to make kind of a longer story short, these cars are great cars to buy and own. You just have to know what you are getting yourself into. You cannot buy one of these cars for $8,000 or $9,000 and be all caught up in, oh, it's 500 horsepower, oh, it's a V12, and not factor in what it's going to cost to keep the thing on the road. My suggestion is, if you're going to buy one of these cars, you need to buy one that was very well maintained, and luckily, it's actually fairly hard to find 600s that weren't well maintained because of the clientele that actually bought these things. But with that in mind, you have to factor in that it's essentially a more expensive car than what you were paying for it. Like I said, this car was $140,000 in 2005. You can't buy one of these cars for $7,000 or $8,000 and act like that's the only money you're gonna have to put into it. You have to buy one of these cars and act as if it's a $15,000 or a $14,000 car, but you only have to put half of it into it initially. You know, these cars can give people a lot of nightmares, but over the course of 3-4 years, it's usually not going to be more than, you know, $5,000-$6,000 in repairs, and that's if you're paying the dealership to do it. How's this for a feature? 2005? No need to actually put the key in the dash. You put your foot on the brake. And that snake-like hissing noise that you're hearing, is the air bladders in this seat, because this seat has air bladders that will massage you. These will contour you and hold you in place, and unfortunately that's broken in this car. So be it. It could have a lot of other worse issues than that. But another cool feature of this car, the gauge cluster is actually out of a Mercedes S65 AMG. So versus having a normal looking W220 speedometer, it goes up to 220 miles an hour and says AMG V12 BIturbo. My apologies once again for the seat that is very pissed off at me right now, but that does go away after it figures out that it does not work. It just, the pump turns off, so it's not too bad to live with. But another really, you know, the cool features of this car is just the attention to detail. Thank you for turning off, seat. So the headliner is finished in Alcantara, which is very ahead of its time for these type of cars. You know, nowadays all cars essentially you can get them with an Alcantara headliner option, but this one is just really cool because it's so, you know, it's just a very old car. And the normal Mercedes S-Class is a very, very nice place to be, but the 600 has a bunch of upgrades such as the wood trim, the leather is Napa leather, and stuff like the hand, I don't even know what the handles, the ceiling handles. These are finished in real wood, and look at how dampened this is. It takes like 5 minutes for this thing to shut, and you don't even hear a noise. Like I said, the rear has its own climate control with its own separate blower motor for the fan. And I mean, that thing puts out a lot of heat on its own. So it's great because Mercedes are known for having blower motor issues with their climate controls. With this car, 2 of them have to break before you freeze to death in the winter. It's like being in a limousine, and you can recline your rear seats. The headrest is delivered to you. If you hit the headrest button, it just rises up, which I shall now demonstrate. So now, sitting in the back of the S-Class is exactly where you want to be. As much fun as this car is to drive, you really want to be in the back of this car because it's where everything is really, truly amazing. So, take a look at the headrest. A lot of people will just instinctually grab it and pull it up. Not in the 600. Very nice. And these rear seats are stupid comfortable. Like, this is one of the best seats ever. You know, like, to have an upgrade from comfortability back here, you really need to stretch it to like a Bentley or a Rolls Royce or something that's just even crazier. And I can just recline my seat. It doesn't recline that far, but it's still better than nothing. And I also feel like I want my heated seat. I'll put it on low for right now. Get a nice warm up from this. And another cool feature, all S-Class have these rear view mirrors in the back so that you can just look at yourself and know that you've made it. However, in the 600, this is finished in wood. It might be hard to see, but it is finished in wood. Same with these ashtrays. And the ashtrays are real wood as well. If it looks like wood, it's wood. And look at this. There's an ashtray and a cigarette lighter for every back seat in this car because it was an entirely different area. And look at how designed and look how well designed and how much attention to detail just goes into the ashtray. So the ashtray's out right now. You're smoking your cigar, or if you're a rapper, your blunt. And then you pull this back, the light turns off. And here is your chrome finished ashtray that you can then dump out in any desired location. How cool is that? You also have not only the vents right here that are so hot that it's literally melting my face, you also have vents up here mounted in the pillars to help distribute where all of the airflow is really coming from in this car. And this is truly just one of the best back seats. The wood even goes down here to the cup holders. In a normal S-Class, this would be finished in a plastic, trying to find it would look like this. It would look like this kind of material. But in the 600, this is real slab of wood right here. You click this open, and you see a very dirty cup holder. How nice is that? And of course in here, this is where they would put a first aid kit, or where you would put your phone if you're in the back of this car, or whatever. You know, this car does not have a fridge. You know, you have to get a Maybach for that. So, you know, you got to live with maybe having a cooler in the trunk, but for 2005, it is very, very excellent. I can recline my seat a little bit back. Ooh, perfect. One of the other funny things is, while this headrest is delivered to you power, you would think that it would go down at the same rate that it was brought to you. It would rise up. Nope. You hit this button, and it just falls down with a loud thud. I don't know why they do that, but it's interesting, I guess. You can also see that there are these vents in the seat right here, and that symbolizes that the front seats are, of course, heated, but they're also air conditioned, which, you know, that technology has really trickled down into a lot of modern cars. You know, you get pickup trucks with that now, but back in 2005, you know, that was really some of the start of the cooled seats. But the first car company to make cooled seats, little trivia right here, Saab. But, you know, other than that, Saabs are cool, but it's not a Benz. Now, I appreciate you spending time to look at possibly the best or worst decision I will ever make. But keep in mind that I have access to getting these parts much cheaper than most people are able to, as well as having an army of technicians that will work on this car for almost beer money, you know, and you really have to have connections and relationships in place if you're going to take one of these on, especially if you're 19 years old. You know, this is not as reliable as other Mercedes are, because other Mercedes, in my opinion, far more reliable than Audi or BMW. That's going to start a war in the comment section. I know, but that's from my experience, having owned all of them. So I really appreciate you taking a look at this car and send some good luck my way, because that's definitely going to be needed when owning a vehicle like this.